What does it mean to you to dream big? When somebody tells you to go after your dreams, do you get really inspired or do you start to feel kind of panicky because that phrase, go after your dreams, intimidates you? Well, today I have somebody on the podcast to talk about dream making, goal setting, and of course, the lessons that we can learn from failure and from not actually achieving our dreams. Nolan Nichols is somebody who, like me, is an entrepreneur starting out his own brand on this idea of a million dreams and really trying to help people understand what it means to have a dream, create goals to go after that dreams, and then what do you do when the dream might change or the dream doesn't look the way that you thought it was going to, and how do you pivot when that happens. So I am so excited to introduce you to Nolan Nichols, and I hope you love our conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Welcome to Drawn, the podcast that draws you in with stories of hope, healing, and even a little hustle while battling anxiety and depression. Think you have to wait until you've conquered your mental illness to start living a joyful, meaningful life? Think again. Conquering your mental illness is part of living a life you love, and we're going to figure it out together. I'm Katie Rochetko, and this is Drawn. Well, hey there, Nolan. Welcome to the Drawn podcast. I'm ecstatic to have you on the show.
Katie, it is so good to be on. I'm a big fan of the podcast and the things that you're doing through the blog. I'm just really excited to be here.
Well, our viewers are definitely in for a treat, guys, because you are the kind of person who just nobody can talk to you without smiling. Like, I've never even met you in person, but every time we've talked on the phone or emailed back and forth, you bring a smile to my face because I can tell just how passionate you are for life and for motivating others to go after their dreams. And so I just think you're infectious, and I cannot wait to share that energy with all of our listeners.
Thank you so much. I'm just really excited to be on and really appreciate everything that you've done to encourage me and what you're doing as well. So yeah, super excited.
So let's start at the beginning. You are like me, and you're kind of an entrepreneur in the sense that you've started this new brand, this new platform, and it's really kind of in its infancy stages, just like my own. And so I'd love to talk to our viewers about who you are, what you're all about, and a little bit more about what exactly is A Million Dreams. So I'll turn things over to you.
Yeah, so I grew up in Luray, Virginia, which is, if you've heard of the Luray Cavern, if you're from there, you call it Luray. Everybody else is Luray. So that's kind of like the lingo with that. But I grew up there, grew up a Virginia Tech fan, and I started getting into video production when I was in high school. And our high school basketball coach came over and said, I had him in math class, and I was in 10th grade, and he said, we need somebody to video our games. Would you be interested in doing that and traveling to the home and away games? And I was not great at basketball. I mean, when I play basketball, my specialty is defense because you don't want me to have the ball. So I was like, oh, this is great because I won't make the basketball team anyways, and this would allow me to travel with the team. So I did that from 10th grade through senior year, really liked it. And in my junior year, that same high school basketball coach said, I had a former player whose roommate went to Virginia Tech, and he got involved with the video program there, and they traveled with the football team. They got scholarship. It was very demanding. They had to give up a lot of time, nice weekends, holidays, but, if that's something that interests you, that could be a goal for you. So I grew up a Virginia Tech fan, so that became my goal. The problem is that they only hire freshmen, and they only hire 2 people a year. And so going into my freshman year, I knew that most people that were in this program, this internship, majored in communication, and I didn't know what communication was. I thought communication was like running telephone wire and TV cable, so I was like, oh, that sounds great. Luckily, when I started taking communication classes, I realized, oh, I really like journalism and media. So luckily that worked out, and fortunately, I was able to get on with the internship, and I was there for all of undergrad. I did grad school there also through that program, and then I worked there for 3 years. And it was incredible, Katie. I think it showed me the power of a dream because I was able to really have high hopes for something, and then to see it come to fruition, it was just so special. Again, I was traveling with Frank Beamer, somebody that I grew up watching on TV, and then to be able to do that it was a lot of pinch me moments where I was like, how in the world did I get here? How in the world did I get here? How did this happen? So I ended up leaving at the end of 2018, which sounds a little weird because you're like, it's like, why would you leave your dream job? But what I kind of realized is that your dream constantly changes, just like how we constantly change, hopefully for the better. Our dreams change too. And, I felt like it's no use to keep climbing up the ladder if it's leaning against the wrong wall. And I felt like I needed a change to move things around a bit. And so I moved up to Washington, D.C., and I still, keep in really good touch with the people at Virginia Tech. I still come back and freelance from time to time. But I moved up to Washington, D.C. to do video production for U.S. Travel Association. I'm very passionate about travel. So I moved up here, and transitions are sometimes tough, but it went really, really well, and I really love my job now. I really love going back and helping at Virginia Tech. But when I was up here for the first year, I was really kind of thinking, okay, now that I'm up here, and now that I've kind of made that next jump, what is the next chapter look like specifically? And one of the things I realized doing was at Virginia Tech, I was in charge of the student program, and we would do these workshops, like resume workshops and other things that were applicable for students to help them in their next chapter beyond Virginia Tech. And I realized how much I like that stuff, and I realized how much I love just having goals, chasing after dreams. So I started, it's called A Million Dreams, and basically we're going around and just kind of doing workshops with people, not just students, but companies and businesses and other groups of people. And we're just going through exercises of how do you figure out what your dream is and what are some practical steps that you can do. The funny thing is that I was planning to launch that in February of March of 2020, and then COVID happened. And I'm like, oh, the world's upside down. I'm going to have to just sit on this. And the website, everything was good to go. But then finally, I released it in November. And what's been funny is that I thought that COVID would be a setback, and it certainly delayed things. But what I found is that there's so much more of a hunger for that type of content. And I think you've probably seen it too, Katie, with mental health. It's more important than it's always been important, but it's never been more important than what it is right now. So, I'm just really excited about, what's ahead, whatever that looks like. Right now, the workshops are virtual, and although I would rather be in person, the virtual workshops are actually, there's some pros to it. It's not all bad things. There's definitely the benefits to it. So it seems like, there's some, momentum right now between the workshops and the podcast. And like I said, don't know what's ahead, but just, it's just something that I really enjoy working on right now.
Wow, you have given me your perfect whole life story, in a nutshell. And I have so many points where I I want to talk about this and I want to talk about this. So my mind is racing where to actually begin. But I think the first thing that I love that you said is that, when you were working at Virginia Tech with Hokie Nation, that you knew the power of having a dream, but you had to take certain steps towards that dream. And I know that in a previous conversation you and I have had is that you have said that, dream is the overall big picture, and then goals are kind of the little steps to help you get there. And so I'm curious as to when you were going for your dream at Virginia Tech, what were the little goals that you had to set up in your life, and how did you know that those were the goals that you needed to take to make that dream happen?
Yeah, so I think on two sides of that, when I was first applying into the internship with Hokie Vision, I knew, okay, the application starts in January, so I need to start reaching out in September to let them know I'm on campus and have that kind of start lining up as far as getting my name out there to put me in the best spot possible for when the January hiring process comes. So part of it is really being practical about putting yourself out there, and it also maybe even pursuing alternative. Sometimes we frown upon backup plans, but it's good to have options, right? So I was also coordinating with the managers with football. If I wasn't able to get on, because again, they only accept 2 freshmen a year. if I wasn't able to get on with video, can I get on being a football manager? You know, it's like my passion is to be involved with a team. I would rather it be with video, but if not, can I retool and not just be devastated? Although it's okay to be hurt and devastated, those are real things. But can you have other options to where you can still kind of fulfill that goal and that itching to be part, for me, of a team environment? So that's kind of one thing, is really kind of setting up practical steps and putting your best foot forward. When I was leaving Virginia Tech, you know, things were a little bit more ambiguous, right? Because I was still trying to figure out what was the next chapter, but not entirely sure of what it was. So one thing that I did is, it actually is kind of based off a formula that Neil Patrica had. He wrote a book called The Happiness Equation, and he said that society says that you have to do great work that leads to being a big success, whatever you define success is, and then that leads you to being happy, right? And that just makes sense. That just seems what culture kind of pushes us towards. You do good work, that becomes successful, and then you lead to being happy. He said that we actually need to flip this around, that you actually need to start with what makes you happy, what makes you you. So if you focus on being happy first, that allows you to do great work, and that allows you to be successful with however you define success as. So sometimes it's just a matter of putting down on paper, like, what are the things that I enjoy that really make me happy, make me excited? And for me, like, I wanted to try out living in an urban area. You know, there's some other things. I wanted to be able to travel a little bit more. So, you know, writing those things down and being like, okay, this is what I want in the next chapter. And I'm not entirely sure what that looks like. Like, I didn't know, like, U.S. Travel Association, I didn't know. I'd never heard of U.S. Travel until I applied on Indeed, right? You know,
Yeah.
whereas like Virginia Tech, I grew up knowing Virginia Tech. I was familiar with Virginia Tech. Here, I didn't know. So it wasn't like a well thought out dream, because I didn't even know what the organization was called. But sometimes just having that open mind and having kind of a framework of what you want to follow will kind of help direct you along the way. And, you know, if you make a mistake, you know, it's not to say that you can't move on from that, right? Like, I think a lot of times we get paralyzed because we're afraid of, like, oh, is this what I really want to do? I'm afraid of making a mistake. And, you know, there is no mistake. I truly believe that. You know, I think everything kind of sets us up for the next thing with whatever that is. And, you know, no mistake can't be overcome. And, you know, that's just something that really helped me. And I think when you're making that leap of faith, too, you're not going to get to 100%. I think the best advice I have heard is that if you can get to 80%, then you need to go for it. 80 is about as close as you'll get to certainty. So you don't need to get to 100%, but if you can get to 80%, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I really like this idea of going after your dreams and going after your goals. But obviously, this is a mental health podcast. And whether you have like a diagnosed mental health condition at all, whether it's anxiety, depression, or anything else, or you don't, I think the fear of failure or the fear of not being able to actually accomplish our dream or our goal oftentimes prevents us from even trying. And so I'm curious to hear from you as to how do you get over that fear of failure, knowing that, especially like with Hokie Nation, when you're like, they're only taking 2 people and there's how many people applying and I want to be one of them. You know, you mentioned that you had to have a very realistic perspective of like, I may not get this, but you still went for it anyways. And I'm kind of curious as to like, how do you get over that fear, knowing that sometimes the outcome is beyond your control?
Yeah, that can be so tough, because honestly, if things would have worked out my freshman year, I would have taken it really, really hard. And I think that's something that you kind of maybe get used to failure over time. But I'll tell you that even when I was applying to Hokie Vision, Katie, like the first, they usually take people in January. So the first week of classes, I am like so excited to see this person come to our class and talk about this opportunity. The first week comes, it doesn't happen. Second week comes, he still doesn't come. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, where's this person at? I was like waiting all year to apply for this.
Oh no, so they probably already selected their 2 people and didn't even open it up to everyone.
So worried. Yeah, like, so I email him and he's like, we're not sure. if we're going to take people this year. We're not sure if we need people. And
No.
I'm again, like, they take freshmen because they want freshmen all 4 years. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was kind of in that point where, again, I was kind of in this funk, and I was like, God, I'll give it a week. And this was Friday. If I don't hear something by next Friday, I'm going to move on. Bandage the wounds and just find another opportunity, whether it's through managing or something else. So, as things would go, literally next Friday morning, I got an email saying from them, we are going to hire and we'll be at class the following week. So, there's going to be some scary moments when it comes to, following your dream. I had scary moments when I moved up to Washington, D.C., and, you have the transition, and you're wondering if you really made the right decision or not. And every day isn't going to be sunny, right? There's going to be some cloudy days, there's going to be some rainy days, but then there are going to be some sunny days. And I think the key is, and this is one thing that actually our pastor in Washington, D.C. talks about, the key is having small doses of failure that you build immunity to it. The key to success isn't more success. It's failure in small enough doses that you build immunity to it. So, I still would deal with failure with a million dreams, like, every day. Like, I'll reach out to people about doing a virtual workshop for their company or whatnot, and I either don't hear something back, or I hear something back that they're just not interested at this time. And I think being able to have those little failures and just be like, you know what, it's a no, but that's okay. Like, that's just Tuesday. Like, Wednesday is a new day, and you never know what's on the other side. And it's not about lowering your expectations. You still keep your expectations high, but it's just knowing that when you get those little bit of roadblocks, like, it's okay. We'll go around them, and we'll see what's on the other side.
I love that you said that, because one of my favorite quotes is actually from a D group Bible study, which is done out of the Village Church. And Tara Lee Cobble, she created a Bible study called the Bible Recap, which is basically reading like the Bible in a year. And it's a very intense, immersive study. But before the Bible Recap, she started this Bible study, this like international Bible study called D Group. And one of the key mottos of the group is set your expectations bar high, but your grace bar even higher. And I think so many times people have high expectations for themselves, but then when they fail, they forget all about giving themselves grace, because a lot of the times failure is out of their control. And then also, because I know you're a man of faith as well, God has an alternative plan for us. Sometimes it's crazy how what we think we want and what we need is not actually what we want and need. And I know that you've had probably a dozen stories of kind of when one door closes, you find a window that you never knew was even open. And I especially think that that's probably really true with like your high school basketball. I mean, you seem like the kind of guy who probably loved to play sports, and like me, not very good at sports, but you still found a way to get in that environment using a different set of skill sets. So, I mean, that's just really cool. And I think it helps people I wanted to put things into perspective about what it really is like to go after a dream and being okay when the dream changes. Because sometimes I feel like if we say we want to do something and then we don't end up doing that, we have this fear that people are going to think that we weren't good enough to go after that dream or to achieve that dream. Or we have a fear that people are going to assume that we weren't cut out for it, or whatever. That fear of like disappointment or disappointing others and ourselves and things like that. Is that something that you've ever struggled with? Like maybe with Hokey Vision, saying, oh, I'm going to go after this is what I want to do. Like that fear of, but if I don't get it, what are people going to think of me?
Yeah, I think what public perception is, I think sometimes can just always be a scary thing. Like, for example, there's been some things that I've done. Like, I started out before A Million Dreams even started. I started doing these 2 to 3 minute videos, kind of based around a quote that I would put on social media, just kind of like an encouragement video series for people. And when you do those types of things, I think you're always worried that is this going to fall flat? Are people really going to like this? And and I think you have a lot of self-doubt, right? Like, a little bit of an imposter syndrome, where you're like, why am I even trying to do this? Because I'm not qualified to do this. And I think it's so much of following your dreams is a mental battle because you also, you don't, sometimes, to be honest, Katie, a lot of times I would kind of keep things pretty private about dreams because I don't want many people to know them because if they know them, people will know that I've failed when I don't achieve them, and I think that's a constant battle, and I think some things absolutely, can be private. Not saying you have to broadcast everything, but also, the other side is that when you do share people your dream, other people are able to come along and help you, and other people are able to encourage you and even open up opportunities that wouldn't have been opened if they didn't know about it. So I think there is a lot of courage in just letting people know because, social media, it can be a mean and nasty place, absolutely, but it can also be a place where people can be very supportive and they can really help you out. And, you just never know who's on the other side of the content that you're doing, whether you're writing a blog or doing a podcast or doing a video or doing it, sending it, writing an encouraging message. There's so many people on the other side that you don't hear from. And at the end of the day, it's like if you could affect one person, would you still do it? And at the end of the day, yes, and what I want to make sure I do is that I want to make sure I focus on substance more than statistics, right? I don't want to be following the statistics of how many people watch or follow such and such thing, because it's about really making the product as good as possible. And, the statistics and stuff will come later. And at the end of the day, even if it doesn't change one person, it helps me. It really helps. I think when people follow their dreams, it's not just something that will benefit other people, but it is really something that changes you for the better in the process. And I think another important thing to battle through, too, is I started the podcast, a month ago, almost exactly a month ago. And to be honest, Katie, I had doubts when I first was doing it because the week before it launched, it's like when you, I've heard in planes that when you try to land a plane, it's actually very hard to get a plane on the ground because you have a lot of wind coming up from above the runway. So when you get close, you have this force pushing against you to lift you back up, and you really have to try hard to put the plane on the ground. And so it gets close. It gets hard when you get close to the runway. And I was feeling that when I was a week away, I was planning to do this podcast for a month. I was a week away from launching it, and I was getting some cold feet because I was thinking, there's so many podcasts out there in the world. What would this offer that some other podcast isn't offering? And that's a doubt that I really had to push through to be like, you know what? Everybody, this world is a big world, and there's not enough positive content to fully reach everybody. So if this podcast is able to reach somebody that normally wouldn't listen to a podcast or wouldn't think through these kind of things, then it's worth it. It's not about having the most downloaded podcast in the world. It's about doing something that's going to help somebody else. So sometimes just kind of reframing our mindset because it is tough following your dreams, even when you know it's what you want to do. There's always these thoughts in the back of your head that you really kind of have to push through.
Are you familiar with Brendan Burchard at all? I mean, great.
I'm not.
Okay. He's one of those great